AITA for kicking out my freeloading girlfriend who refused to leave? About 2 years ago, Maya dropped out of community college, and since then, she has become someone I barely recognize in a deeply unsettling way. I know that sounds harsh, but I work between 50 and 60 hours a week as a registered nurse to support us because, according to her, she is too beautiful to work. Today, I came home from my shift at 6 in the evening to find her in bed, surrounded by half-eaten DoorDash boxes, without having showered or even brushed her teeth. The only time she had moved was to get the food from the delivery driver at our apartment door. I had a rough day at the hospital, and seeing that scene made me snap. I raised my voice, telling her she could not live like this, and in response, the situation became physical. I wanted to break up with her right then and there, but she emotionally manipulated me by saying she had no one else to turn to. She stayed in bed for the rest of the day, and a few hours later, I went into her room to tell her I could not keep doing this. I do not care who she turns to, but for my own mental health, I can no longer stay with her. She tried once again to guilt-trip me, and when that did not work, she got up. She ran to the kitchen, grabbed a pair of scissors, and threatened to harm herself. I did not want to risk calling her bluff, so I agreed to stay with her. She is currently sleeping, but I have decided to end things tomorrow. If she tries that again and actually goes through with it, it will not be my fault. I do not care anymore. Last night, as we were getting ready for bed, I did not change out of my day clothes and just stood there, telling her we needed to talk. At first, she was smiling and jumping on the bed, thinking I was just being dramatic, but she eventually understood the seriousness in my tone. I told her that something was fundamentally wrong, that I had tried to make things work and be patient with her over the past few years, but that I did not know how much longer I could wait for her to find a job, go back to school, or at least pick up a hobby. I told her that it annoyed me, that she did not seem to care about herself, and that I hated her total lack of ambition or plans for the future. It was probably the first time in a long while that she was so attentive. I was genuinely surprised. She nodded at everything I said, even suggesting places where she could apply for jobs, mentioning some online certificate programs that were starting to interest her, and even offered to let me watch her while she filled out applications to prove she was not lying. I was in shock. In her mind, I was still willing to make the relationship work, and a part of me believed that maybe this was finally the moment she was going to change. That made what came next even harder for me, and for her. I first said that I did not love her the same way anymore, which slowly led me to tell her that I felt absolutely nothing in this relationship anymore, that I was exhausted, and that I wanted a fresh start with someone more motivated, someone who truly wanted to move forward in life. When she realized where I was going with this, she started crying and asked why I had not told her sooner. I replied that I had always asked her to cook, go out with me, try new things, or go back to school, even offering to help pay for her tuition. She said she understood that, but she was disappointed I had not told her my love was fading because, from her point of view, she thought I still loved her just as much. She apologized over and over, saying she was not in a good mental state, that she had no motivation, and that no hobby interested her. The only thing she enjoyed in her day was spending time with me when I came home from my shift. None of this really touched me, other than making me uncomfortable. So I tried to continue by saying her lifestyle might be better suited for someone else, but she cut me off, panicking. She started apologizing again, saying she was going to change, that she would go with me tomorrow wherever I wanted, and that she would look for classes to start in August. But she did not want to lose me because she had nothing else left in her life and hated that I no longer loved her. There were so many tears and so much emotion that I said we would talk about it again when she calmed down. And that is what we did an hour later. She begged that we stay together for 2 months to give her time to change, promising me time and time again that she would. Once again, she listed places where she was going to apply and swore to be a better partner. I did not want to make her homeless, as her name is on the lease too. So it seemed like a reasonable compromise, even though I had my doubts. I then reaffirmed that I wanted to see other people, but she was much more stubborn about this than about her future plans. She asked me to give her a month to try to save our relationship and asked me over and over what she could do to make me love her again. She did not want me to hate her. She said the worst part of all this was losing the only person she had. She was on the verge of breaking down again. So I said okay, we would see where the relationship stood in a month. In my mind, If I gave her 2 months to get back on her feet, then in a month, she would already be better prepared to move on. I did not want her to have a major episode while I was still living with her. So this time frame gave her time to accept it. I slept on the couch that night and planned to keep doing so. She came out around 3 in the morning wanting to talk more, but I said I was exhausted and we would deal with it tomorrow. She slept on the floor next to me, apologizing again. When I asked her to stop, she softly said okay and cried for a while under her blanket. But that is everything that has happened so far. It is one of the hardest things I have ever had to do, but I do not regret anything, and I feel much better having gotten it off my chest. I do not know where the situation will be in 2 months, but I was clear, that is the deadline. Last night, she told me she saw a concept on TikTok where couples put a phone on the table with a timer and each shares what hurt them. I said that was ridiculous. If we were going to talk about our problems, we might as well do it without a time constraint. She eventually agreed and asked me to start by asking exactly when I lost all love for her. As I had already mentioned, it was not a single event, but a constant build-up until I was drained. And I told her that. Then she asked me when I had been the angriest. I replied that I would need a moment to think about it, and she said that was fine. After a few minutes, a memory came back to me. I could not find the right words at first, and then it just came out. I told her the worst moment was when I started my first nursing job at the city hospital. The pace was hellish. It was 12-hour shifts of nonstop work, barely any breaks, all while constantly learning things that nursing school never taught me, with the added expectation of acting like a seasoned professional. It was undoubtedly the most stressful period of my life, and I think other nurses can relate. That year forged my current way of thinking. That hard work pays off if you have passion and willpower. I told her that was when I started losing my feelings the fastest. Seeing her at home, doing nothing all day, coming back to our apartment without a single meal prepared, seeing her unemployed, with no desire to learn anything, completely glued to the internet with nothing concrete to show for it. I told her that it made me even more furious because I had actually offered to help her find part-time jobs with pretty easy hours or suggested looking at new majors at the university that might suit her better this time. But every time, she rejected my proposals. I told her frankly that it disgusted me. She asked me why I had not made a bigger deal out of it back then, saying I should have told her all that. But I replied that there are some things that should not need to be said. I should not have to remind her to shower, eat, or do something other than passively scroll on her phone for hours every day. I also told her that after a stressful 12-hour shift, the last thing I wanted to do was spend my time begging my girlfriend to do something productive. So, I kept quiet and accepted the situation because she was still kind and caring. I had no other reasons to end our relationship back then, and that is when the resentment started to grow. That is also when I became harsher, which I regret now, but I will still say it just like I said the rest. I told her that when she dropped out of her nursing program, I was disappointed because I thought she was entirely capable of doing what I had done. But by spending time with her and getting to know her better, I realized that given the kind of person she was, she never could have finished her studies, and that is why I later suggested simpler jobs or less demanding training programs. Damn it. Even if she had just cooked dinner or found an interesting hobby, I would have appreciated it. But she chose to do nothing for years. It is just the kind of person she is, and that is why my romantic feelings faded over time. She asked if I hated her, and I replied that I did not know. I told her she was very loving and kind, but that I hated the way she had managed her life so far, that I felt no animosity toward her after expressing everything, but that I did not feel anything anymore either, that I was simply exhausted, ready to move on. Throughout the conversation, we maintained eye contact, and sometimes she seemed on the verge of collapsing, but as she had promised, she stayed as calm as possible while I said what I had to say. I told her I was done and that now she could say what she needed to say. But she asked if we could continue later and locked herself in our bedroom for the rest of the day. The next day, we sat down again and finished the conversation. She told me she thought she might be depressed, that she did not feel sad until that night, but that she simply had no motivation to do anything. I received several messages from people suggesting I ask her to get evaluated for ADHD or autism, but when I started bringing it up, she flatly refused. I knew she did not like doctors or hospitals in general, but the fact that she outright refused any kind of evaluation, even after I told her it was not a standard physical, surprised me. She asked if changing her behavior would make me willing to give her another chance. I replied that I did not know, because I felt nothing right now and did not know if these efforts would reignite anything, especially since it took me reaching my breaking point for her to react. She asked if there was any form of compromise possible. I told her again that if in a month I felt there were good reasons to continue, I would, but there was no guarantee my feelings would return. However, I committed to putting in as much effort as she did. She was frustrated by my answer, but I said that was how it was. She then handed me a piece of paper on which she had written down hobbies and interests she wanted to explore. The main two were photography and cooking. She told me she had looked into these ideas while showing me on her phone the applications she had submitted on Indeed and Glassdoor for entry-level positions. I told her that if she managed to show a genuine interest or passion for these activities, I would not even care if she worked, as long as she was trying to better herself. And if she did nothing at all, then it would be best for her to find a job to help support herself if she had to move out. I was also asked privately if I had friends to talk to. I have two female colleagues I often work with at the hospital, Jessica and Sarah, who I trust completely. They are very rational. They both told me I was going to end up getting love-bombed and that everything would go back to how it was before, that I needed to stand firm in my decision to move on. They are precious friends who even offered to let me crash on their couch for a few nights, arguing that I would fall prey to her manipulation if I stayed near her. But that did not seem fair since I was still technically in a relationship, although I said I would think about it if the situation worsened. I value them highly, so I always try to follow their advice. Despite many messages telling me I am making a mistake, I want to try one last time, even if I feel very emotionally closed off and indifferent to our current situation. Many of you told me this could change if both people put in the effort. I also followed the advice of those who said to cut off physical intimacy, which was my intention from the start. So I continue to sleep in the living room. But every night, she sleeps on the floor next to me, even when I tell her I prefer to be alone with my thoughts. She replies that this is not something she can accept. Maya was very proactive last week. It was an almost manic burst of energy as she tried to take an interest in a bunch of things she thought she might enjoy. I kept my promise to do my part and tried to help her as much as possible. The only interest she stuck with is photography. I already mentioned she had a stash of clothes accumulated over the years. She sold some of them on Depop to get enough money to buy a Canon Rebel T7 camera, which she considers suitable for beginners. She researched the subject much more than I did. I honestly think she stuck with this hobby because it allowed her to spend more time with me. She kept asking me to go out with her into the city to take pictures and test her camera. And since I had promised to put in as much effort as she did and did not want to be a hypocrite, I did it, even after long shifts at the hospital. But there was a radical shift in her behavior. While she has always been an affectionate partner, this became way too much. She would text me maybe 8 times a day at work asking how I was doing, if I was mad, what I wanted to do when I got home, and so on, constantly trying to gauge my mood. When we went out, her need for public displays of affection was at its peak. She wanted to kiss me, hold my hand, and stay out as long as possible, even when I told her I had an early shift the next day. It is hard to explain in words. I do not know if it was truly love bombing, but given the energy she put into all of it, I fully expected a crash, and it happened during the second week. There was a limit to what I could handle before feeling the need to take a break, especially with everything I had been through recently. My work friends are the only other people I really talk to, and I told them everything. They warned me once again that I was getting love-bombed, just as they had predicted, and that it was only going to get worse. They asked what I planned to do if I ended up stuck with her beyond the 2 months, and I replied that our lease was ending soon, which brought me some relief, because I would be ready to move out if things went sour, while giving her enough time to prepare. They expressed their concern, telling me they found me more tired than usual at work, that it was becoming visible, but I told them I felt fine. Over the weekend, they insisted I go out with them to improve my mood, saying that spending too much time in my apartment was not good for my mental health in this situation. I refused at first, but after they followed up with me the same day, I accepted, and for most of the day, I was with them and genuinely had a great time. In fact, it lifted my spirits immensely. Naturally, Maya wondered where I had been all day. I told her I was with friends, and even though she was disappointed we could not go out together, I promised her we would spend the entire next day together. I keep receiving messages telling me to cut ties with my friends, that they are manipulating my decisions. But think what you will, I know they mean well and are looking out for me. They played a major role in me quitting smoking this year. Even though it made me more anxious at times, it vastly improved my health. You build different bonds with people in your work environment, and I trust my co-workers with my life, so to speak. When I said the emotional crash was coming, I was right. It was ugly, loud, and could have easily been partially avoided. When I posted my last update, I was not in a good mental state. So looking back on the events of the previous week and writing helped calm my nerves. I am a bit ashamed to say I started smoking a little again, but it also helped me immensely mentally because I was on the verge of breaking down, and without my friends, I did not have much else to turn to. I could not talk to them about this breakdown. I did not want them to get involved. One day, during one of our photography outings in the city, Maya was not in a very good mood. When we got home, she told me I seemed distant, that I looked angry or upset. Trying to improve my communication, I told her I was uncomfortable with her constant need for affection and validation, that it had become suffocating. Since she was still sleeping in the living room at night, I no longer had any alone time at home. After so many outings, I felt physically and emotionally drained. To be honest, I was mostly physically exhausted. And according to what my coworkers and Maya say, it really shows on my face. Maya took that very badly. She did not speak to me at all for the rest of the day, nor the next day. The second day, she was in a darker state of mind. Maybe I should have apologized or communicated better right then. It might have avoided a good chunk of what followed, but I preferred to enjoy that rare moment of solitude and rest. And then came the third day. A lot of things happened that day, and that is when everything exploded and the problems worsened over the following week. I will try to be as accurate as possible. That morning, I left for work without saying goodbye or speaking to Maya because I was almost late. Usually, I go see her at least before leaving. She had started sleeping in our bedroom again a few days prior due to her mood. At work, I was in a much better mood than usual. I was rested, I had some time to myself, and I was having a good day, which is rare. My coworkers sometimes go out for dinner after our shift, and in recent weeks, I had always declined. But that day, I went with them, which meant I got home around 9 in the evening or later. It was quite late, and I had a couple of beers. This is where I struggle to write, where I often freeze up. When I arrived home, I saw Maya sitting in the living room, staring at me as I walked through the door without saying a word. It surprised me. I asked her what she was doing. She was not on her phone, nor watching TV, just sitting there as if she had been staring at a wall before I walked in. She asked me where I had been. I said I was with friends. She immediately asked if it was my work friends, Jessica and Sarah. She knows I mostly work with women, and I had already told her about my friends before our relationship reached this point. I said yes. I was with them. We went out to dinner. She asked if I had been drinking. I do not know if it was obvious or if it was a random question, but I answered yes. An uncomfortable silence followed, which felt much longer in my memory. She then brought up the 1-month deadline to see if my feelings would return and asked me if they had. I took a moment to reply. The question had caught me off guard. I said I appreciated her efforts, but that I still did not know where we stood and could not give her a clear answer. She repeated that during our outings, I was distant and that she felt I was not putting in as much effort as she was to make our relationship work. I asked her what she meant by that since I went out with her whenever she asked and did everything to support her new interests. To me, it just seemed like another attention-seeking meltdown. I think that is the moment she started losing her cool. Her voice was shaking. She told me I was quiet, that I never smiled when we went out, that I barely spoke. I replied that she already knew my feelings, so it was not a surprise if I was not expressive. And I clarified that it was mostly fatigue, not a lack of interest in her. But I do not think she believed me. She confessed that she was overanalyzing everything I did now, that she knew I had lost my feelings, and that she did not know what to do to make me love her again. I reiterated that she should find a passion, any passion, that she should do something with her days. She replied that for 2 weeks she had been as active as possible, to the point of being mentally exhausted, and despite that, my mood was not changing. She wondered if anything was really going to change by the end of the month, and that is when she broke down. In tears, with a broken voice, she told me how much she loved me, how much love and affection she had given me throughout our whole relationship, only for me to reject her over what she considered an excuse. She asked if I had ever truly loved her. She said that even though she was hurt, betrayed, and angry, she still loved me and wanted to continue this relationship, that she would have nothing left if I left. No one, nowhere to go, no future, that she would lose all will to live. I could say a lot about this moment, but I cannot really express how emotionally broken she was. She screamed at times, cried until she choked, and I stayed frozen. It was the first time I had ever seen her in such a state. She kept repeating that there would be no reason to live if this was the end. No matter what job she found, a month would not be enough. She knew I would not want her anymore, that she would have nothing left. After that, she locked herself in our room again for several days. When I tried to knock to talk, she screamed at me to leave. So I would leave. A few days later, she finally calmed down enough for us to speak again. She was still affected, but very sorry for what she had said and done. She told me all of that was driven by emotion, that she did not really mean it. And the days I finally got to spend alone, without her or my friends, gave me the mental clarity I needed to do what I should have done a month earlier. I told her as calmly as possible that it was over, that there was no hope left for us, that I did not want to be in a relationship with her anymore. I told her I would let her stay for the remaining time on our lease so she could find a job and that I would help her get back on her feet. I also clarified that if she had not made any concrete plans by the time the lease was up, I would leave and move out on my own. She started crying again, but this time in a much more resigned way, which almost made me cave, but she accepted the terms. It was finally over. She managed to land a part-time job at a local grocery store about a week later, as that was all they offered her. After our final confrontation, our communication was practically dead. When she was not working, she stayed alone in her room all day and night. I was still sleeping on the couch. At this point, I was used to it, and it did not really bother me anymore. It might sound selfish or cruel to say, but I felt incredibly free and happy, at least for a while. I did not tell my coworkers about my breakup when it happened. I just kept vaguely telling them we were working on our relationship. During this time, I went out much more often after work with them because staying in the apartment was becoming heavy and depressing. I had reached a peak of happiness I had not felt in a very long time. Then everything collapsed the following week. I came down with a bad case of pneumonia and had to take 2 weeks off work to recover. At first, I thought it was just a common cold. But one day, it hit me all at once. My lungs felt like they were working at half capacity. It was impossible to take a deep breath without going into a coughing fit. And I was constantly tired. Even while writing this update, even though most of the symptoms are gone, I still need an inhaler to breathe sometimes. During those 2 weeks, I slept almost all the time. An average of 12 to 14 hours a day, and the rest of the time, I was lying down. When I told her what the doctor said and she saw me in that state, she offered to let me have the bedroom, but I refused, saying I was fine on the couch. Since she worked part-time, she still spent a lot of time at home. During the first few days, she left me alone. But around the middle of the first week, she started checking on me from time to make sure I was okay or to offer me food. Honestly, I hated the fact that my illness was forcing us to interact again. Not because I was angry, but because it was extremely awkward and weird to have to depend on her for certain things, not even a week after our breakup. I did not feel well enough to go grocery shopping as usual, and since she already worked at the store, she insisted on taking care of it. When I handed her my debit card, she refused it and said she would pay for it herself. At first, I was mostly eating fruits and crackers, but she told me that if I wanted to heal, I needed to eat full meals. So, she started cooking for me, even when I told her I did not want anything. But despite that, we did not eat together. She would return to her room after taking care of me. Then at the start of the second week, she began sitting with me when I was awake and talking to me. She would tell me about her day, her coworkers, a whole bunch of things. I got the feeling these were things she had wanted to tell me for a long time, but had not been able to because of everything that had happened. And once she started talking, she did not stop. And frankly, I enjoyed listening to her. It was different. Gradually, we moved on to watching Netflix together when I could not sleep, and then to talking about our long-buried problems. It was extremely cathartic. There was no yelling, no arguing, just listening. We had not had a discussion like that in years, not since the days when we were just friends and classmates in college. One day during the second week, I felt very sick. I did not want to do anything or talk, but I could not sleep because of my cough. She called out of work that day and stayed by my side for a long time. We did not exchange a single word, but she made sure I ate and drank. I cannot really put into words how those 2 weeks made me feel regarding our situation, but I will simply say that it gave me a lot of time to think. Since recovering, I have made an effort to chat with her without forcing it, unlike the previous month. Just simple conversations about her photos, her work, her co-workers, whatever. She spent less time in her room and more in the living room with me, telling me about her days and me mine. And over the course of these weeks, we went from being a couple to being friends in a more natural, fluid way. It became easier to talk to each other, even though there was still a barrier between us, something left behind by our last argument. It is hard to explain, but it was definitely there. The deadline I had set for our lease ending was approaching in September. September arrived quickly, and our lease was coming to an end. I made the decision not to renew it. I needed a fresh start away from her and the memories of our relationship. I had been thinking about it for weeks, and even though I was grateful for the moments of connection we had shared during my recovery, I knew I could not stay. On the last Saturday of the month, I told her it was time for me to leave. I explained my reasons while trying to stay calm. I told her I needed to focus on myself and my future, and that living together was no longer a viable option. I saw her face change as my words sank in. She started crying, and an argument broke out almost immediately. She accused me of abandoning her, of not caring about everything we had been through. She screamed that I was throwing our relationship away for no reason, and that she did not understand why I was leaving when we seemed to be getting along better. I tried to answer her calmly, but her accusations hurt. I told her I was not abandoning her, but that I was trying to take care of myself. The argument escalated. She became more and more agitated. I saw the pain and anger in her eyes, and then things took a frightening turn. In a moment of rage, she lunged at me. I did not see it coming. I was caught off guard, and before I understood what was happening, she struck my face. I stumbled back, shocked and confused. When she realized what she had done, she froze. Her expression shifted from anger to panic. She started apologizing, but I already felt the deep sense of betrayal. I walked out of the room to gather my thoughts. My heart was racing. Adrenaline was coursing through me. I did not know what to do. After a few minutes, I decided to leave the apartment to get some fresh air. I drove around aimlessly, the weight of what just happened crashing down on me. I ended up at an urgent care clinic after calling my friend Jessica, who insisted I get checked out. I waited in the reception area, feeling ashamed and lost. I did not want to make a big deal out of it, but I knew I had to see a doctor. After a quick exam, they confirmed that physically I was fine, but advised me to take time to reflect on the emotional impact of what had happened. I stayed there for a few hours, mostly in silence, reflecting on everything we had been through. The reality of our situation became clearer to me than ever. Once I left, I took a moment to gather my thoughts. I was angry, disappointed, and relieved all at once. I understood that I needed to speak to her one last time. I sent her a text message telling her I would not be filing a police report. I did not want to make things worse for her, but I had to be clear. I told her to never contact me again. I reminded her she had a chance to get back on her feet, but that she needed to use it wisely. I wanted absolutely no more contact. I was ready to turn the page, and I hoped she could heal too. I hit send, and a strange sense of calm washed over me. It was finally over. The next day, I packed my bags and moved out. I left behind the memories, the arguments, and the love that had once existed. It was time for me to start from scratch, far away from everything that had held me back. Comment. What I truly hope we all remember is that setting boundaries is a profound act of self-respect. It does not make you a bad person to protect your own peace of mind. You can show immense kindness and compassion for someone while also recognizing that they can no longer be a part of your journey. We can support the people we care about, but we cannot carry the weight of their choices for them. True strength is often found in the quiet, difficult decision to walk away from what is hurting you. It is about choosing your own well-being when no one else will. This creates the space you need to heal and grow. Everyone deserves a chance to build a life that feels healthy and hopeful. I hope you always find the courage to build that life for yourself. Take good care of yourselves out there. If you like the stories, Don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.